Detroit. Brad, I stopped by the diner, got a coffee from Olive. We're ready to go.
Yes, we shared our coffee on the way down. I've got news for our fans. We have a driver change coming up the backstretch, and the driver that I can tell you feels a whole lot better this morning than he did yesterday. What a sight!
Michigan, now resides in Kent, Washington. Of course, Jeff Bernard's uncle, Mark Webber, the leader here of the Detroit race. Jeff has driven here many times in the unlimited hydroplane class, and it's a good opportunity for Jeff to get on the track, keep his driver's license in status with the H1 Unlimited Series, and Brad looks good off the turn. Coming to you.
Yeah, he knows this boat very, very well. He's spent a lot of sea time in this one over the years, so he knows it well. You are right. He's making sure he keeps his driver's license going.
So far, but 145.837 miles per hour, 145 and some change for Jeff Bernard. Brad, he made it look very easy on this glass smooth water we are greeted to this morning here in Detroit. The weatherman predicted humidity, and I'm already feeling it up here at the stand. But thank goodness the winds have subsided. Looks like we're going to have a fabulous day of racing for the Gold Cup for the Unlimited. Also, we have the Grand Prix from the Hydroplane Racing League, along with our Vintage Unlimiteds, Inboard Vintage. Brad, it's action-packed, sunrise to sunset.
Yeah, I hope you got your running shoes on, Mr. Ayler, because we're going to be moving today, but it's going to, well, wait a minute. You're down there in that glass enclosed, air-conditioned little spot there. You mentioned the humidity. Mother Nature, bring it on. You keep the wind to yourself. Give us all the humidity you want. We'll take it. We're good to go. And I'm going to expect we're going to see Mr. Bernard here get reunited with this race course here on the Detroit River, probably with a timing run here. And if that's what it's going to be,
finish line for that timing run. I could have been a little bit tardy as well on that clock. It seemed like you hit the accelerator just right inside that entrance pin. Bert Henderson qualified the boat on Friday, 2-lap average speed of 138.626 miles per hour. As Brad mentioned, Jeff Bernard will get the ride in Unlimited Heat 1B later this morning. And then Bert Henderson will take over the driving chores with the U7 Spirited Detroit Tri-Island Energy Detroit Machinery Center.
Jeff Bernard coming slowly up the backstretch one more time. See if he doesn't do another timing run. And for our fans here, it's hard to imagine Jeff Bernard. Jeff Ayler from down in the pit area. Atop the pit tower, we have more activity out on the race course here as we prepare for racing early this morning. The U11 Reliable Diamond Tool presents J&D's is away from the dock. Tom Thompson behind the wheel. Our folks in the grandstand have that gorgeous hydroplane right in front of them as Tom Thompson attempts to spool it up. And right now, that's not happening, but I assume he'll get it going. Jeff, you should have eyes on him right in front of you.
I sure do, Brad. The sun behind the overcast skies here early this morning in Detroit is Tom Thompson trying to pop the chartreuse and Carnival Orange Reliable Diamond Tool presents J&D's. And now Brad, the chauffeur out of Cambridge, Maryland, has a light to it and just goes past the judges' stand. One of our fine feathered friends to the right of that boat had to escape quickly to the right. And Brad, thank goodness, the fine feathered friend made it out safe and sound.
There we go.
Tom Thompson checked in Friday, a qualifying speed of 153.865 miles per hour. That was the 2-lap average. Brad, Tom right in front of you. Beautiful boat. It is one. If you're handicapping one of your dark horses here today, they do have a shot.
Yeah, you mentioned that on Friday, that this was your dark horse in the race, and I wouldn't argue with you, and I've made the comment many times that one of these days, the Rainey family and Tom Thompson are going to stand atop the podium. They're going to stand up and fight somebody one of these days. And I've also always said, if the final heat comes around and Tom Thompson has a good inside lane and it's clean and he's on time, you're going to have your hands full driving around this guy.
Possibly Tom Thompson could be today like Catholic Boy was yesterday evening at the Travers Stakes at Saratoga. Catholic Boy, nice performance at 7-to-1 odds. And Brad, you take those anytime you can get them.
Yeah, you certainly do, and it didn't even get to 8 o'clock before you brought up your first horse racing reference, so good for you. I know we had to postpone dinner a little bit last night, so you could see just how much money you won or lost on that one. Tom Thompson all the way down at the Belle Isle Bridge turn, comes off that exit thing down there, and now he'll start that big, long run up the backstretch, albeit slowly this time. And he gets about halfway up there, Jeff, and he's aiming right toward the yacht club. And about halfway up, that course takes a little dogleg to the left.
Looking good coming to you, Brad. Bring us to it.
All right, here he comes. Now he's got that yacht club on the right-hand side of the boat. Here comes Tom. You can tell when they're moving because that low, long, lean rooster tail. Now he'll set it up for the rooster tail. Tom Thompson hammers into this corner in gorgeous water conditions, and like that, Jeff, he's off and coming down to you.
Boy, excellent speed into turn number 2. He's flying across the start-finish line buoy. Tom Thompson of the beautifully painted Reliable Diamond Tool presents J&D's. Heading down into turn number 1, the Belle Isle Bridge in the background. As you know, Brad, I've referenced that turn as the big left-hand sweeper. Cranks it to the left. Beautiful sight here this morning in Detroit. We have our H1 Unlimited streaming up. The video and audio through Jared and Tate Meyer. With that, Brad, I know Vicki McDowell's listening in Madison. Good morning, Vicki.
That's good of you, Mr. Ayler. But right now it is Tom Thompson, again, coming hard up the backstretch. Look at the sponsons. No movement. He is solid as a rock. Now he sets it up for the corner, hangs it on the skid fin. That's that big wall of water that comes off the left side of that trailing edge of the sponson. And like that, right in front of you, Jeff.
We'll see if we get a time. That looked like a nice lap.
Boat owner Scott Rainey.
154.946 miles per hour. 154.946 for Tom Thompson. Reliable Diamond Tool presents J&D's, and Brady has got off the accelerator as we see the rooster tail size decrease entering turn number 1. Of course, a couple of associate sponsors on the 11 this weekend, the fine folks out of Paducah, Kentucky, the Clink Talk Preferred Finishes, and up north of here in Pontiac, Rheinmetall.
Rheinmetall, they make automotive pistons, and they have manufacturing spots around the world in different countries. Glad to have them on board that boat. Right in front of you, we got another bright red one, and this is the one I like. This is my dark horse, and I'm not sure it's all that dark.
And speaking of pistons, the turbocharged Allison Racer, campaigned by Ed Cooper out of Evansville, Indiana. Wales, Michigan's Jimmy King in the cockpit. The U3, the Rooster Tail, 60 years of parties. They've taken to the Detroit River, Brad, here in this testing session. It's the last time the Unlimiteds can test before they go into Heat 1A at 9 a.m., Heat 1B at 9:20. Tom Thompson's right in front of you.
Yeah, he's doing a timing run here. He started to accelerate at the buoy before the entrance pin to the corner. So he's going to bring more speed to you, Jeff.
And Thompson across the line. Brad, I did not have the watch on Tom Thompson. Bring Jimmy King up to the Detroit Yacht Club. I'll put the watch on Jimmy, going at a pretty good clip right now.
Yeah, he's coming up the backstretch, making sure everything is fine in that World War II Allison power plant they've got. It's turbocharged, and we found out yesterday when you fired up 5 of those in the pit area at the same time, that turbocharger really muffles a lot of that sound. Not near as loud as those open stack Allisons that we've got in some of our vintage boats. Here comes Jimmy King through the corner. He's up and running now, but he's really popping, Jeff.
I went ahead and put the clock on him, Brad, and the turbocharged Allison had a timing run there prior to the entrance pin of turn number 2, the start-finish line at 14 seconds. An identical timing run that Jeff Bernard had earlier this morning in the Spirit of Detroit. Tom Thompson slow in front of the Yacht Club. We'll see if Tom elects to make another timing run.
Yeah, he's running slow up here right now. He's outside pretty good. In fact, he's way outside right now. I think he's going to bring him back to the barn. He's going very, very deep in the corner, going very slowly. And he will come back to the pit area. Just had a little quick conversation with Scott Rainey, the boat owner and crew chief, and he had a smile on his face. I think they like where they're going.
That was a very encouraging run this morning, and of course the U3, the Rooster Tail, 60 years of parties. Jimmy King out, made one. Kind of a hot lap, Brad. He slowed it down halfway up the back chute, but that turbocharged Allison seemed to be purring in fine fashion. And I know Ed Cooper Jr., I believe he has 4 bullets down there in motors. I think 2 of them are pretty good for today's activity.
Yeah, I think so. They're coming back to the pit area. Jimmy just pops the lid on it right now. And that noise you hear in the background, that is a turbine power plant fired up in the pit area here. That belongs to the U1 Miss Home Street. And again, they had another hot start out of the back of that motor. Not near as hot as it was yesterday. And we're going to have a little bit of fun coming up here because I believe we've got a sling on the 7. And I think they're just now lifting the 7 off the trailer, so they're going to come back out. But in the meantime, I mentioned earlier, the 1955 Miss Thriftway is in the water, and they are going to come out on the race course. And you sent me down there, Jeff, to go find out who's going to be behind the wheel. Well, it's not going to be one person, it's going to be 2.
Okay.
So we'll have a little conversation here. We'll wait until the home street decides that motor's ready to go.
So I have to take it by myself when you're out on the in the Thriftway.
Oh, no, this will be fun. I wonder what's going on here because they're trailer firing the home street, and as you know, they've got to spray the wing down with the hose. So they're spraying the wing down. Cindy's got the hose, or that's not Cindy, but somebody's got the hose going, and they're spraying down the horizontal stabilizer on the home street, and right beneath the horizontal stabilizer is the Thriftway in the water. So I'm hoping that hose isn't shooting too far, or our drivers might be getting a little wet, but I think they're okay.
Brad, you mentioned Dave Bardish's U7 Spirit of Detroit going back into the water. Do you think Bert Henderson will get in the seat here for this run?
Boy, and I think it's Jeff. And it is Jeff, yes. Looks like Jeff's driving suit, so yes,
Okay.
I've got confirmation it is Jeff Bernard. And they seem to be hustling because the boat just now got dropped into the water. On my watch, I've got about 5 minutes after 8. They seem to be hustling a little bit, but the Thriftway guys are definitely ready to go. Now,
We started a little bit late. I think they want to hold this testing session open until 8:15 for the Unlimiteds. 8:15. That looks like that will be the cutoff point
all right.
for unlimited testing. Then Brad will come right back into it. 9 o'clock, Unlimited Heat 1A in memory of Charlie Strang. And at 9:20, Unlimited Heat 1B in memory of Leonard C. Boy, the name Charlie Strang, Brad, my goodness, we miss him. And what a player when it comes to automobile racing, hydroplane racing. Charlie Strang was right in the mix of everything and had to be the judge. When the gavel struck, that's how he ruled them.
Absolutely. I was just over trying to get confirmation here on which boat is going to come out first. We're not sure. We would assume the 7, and Jeff would have priority. And I've got to believe that they're holding the Thriftway because the drivers, plural, have been sitting in that boat for probably the last 5 minutes, and the lines are still on it.
Looking at the remainder of our morning schedule, at 10 a.m. we'll have Vintage Unlimited. 10:25, Grand Prix Heat 1A. 10:40, Grand Prix Heat 1B. At 11:10 a.m., Unlimited Heat 2A, brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade. At 11:30, Unlimited 2B, also brought to you by Mike's Hard Lemonade. And then, Brad, at 11:45 until noon, we'll have lunch, autograph session, and the opening ceremonies drawn up by Richard Greiner.
Richard Greiner has got it all pulled together for opening ceremonies. That will take place on the main stage behind the grandstands. I would invite everybody to come over there. It's always kind of it's not a terribly long procedure, a long ceremony, but there's always some good music, the singing of both the Canadian and the American national anthems. We'll have an invocation by the H1 chaplain, Jim Riley. Yours truly will be over there pulling it together, so you've got it on the schedule there. Would you say 11:45?
Yes, sir, 11:45. And, of course, our 2 co-grand marshals for this year's 2018 Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers APBA Gold Cup will be there, and the youngster Matthew Greiner and the wily veteran Bill Rands.
Yep, Bill Rands will be there. Matthew Greiner is a very, very special kid. Got to know him yesterday and talked to him as Jeff Bernard spools up the U7 away from the dock. You'll see him momentarily. Matthew Greiner, a terrific kid, as I said. Met him yesterday. He's our Grand Marshal, and he will be an integral part of our opening ceremonies. So you see the strobe light blinking above Mr. Bernard. That will blink until he reaches 80 miles an hour. Once he gets to 80 miles an hour, it will turn off. There it goes, and he's right in front of you, Jeff.
Jeff Bernard back out on the Detroit River in the U7 Spirit of Detroit Tri-Island Energy Detroit Machinery Center. So a busy morning here for Jeff Bernard, getting back into the seat of the U7. As Brad mentioned, Jeff has drove this boat many times when it was under the ownership of Ted Porter out of Decatur, Indiana, when he campaigned the FormulaBoats.com and Graham Trucking hydroplanes. Dave Bardish acquired this craft last year. Bert Henderson, who will co-drive today, got the seat, and now the 7's going down, and now he picks it back up, Brad. Let's see if he can make it to you.
He's laboring a little bit when he came off the corner, but he is still moving down there. You talked about the history of this boat. It is the former T5, Miss Budweiser. And then Ted Porter and Precision Performance Engineering became the ownership group of this hydroplane. ran it as formulaboats.com. That's where Jeff spent a lot of seat time behind the wheel of this boat previously. And I'm looking down at the trailer that the U7 sits on. It still says Formula Boats on the side of it. So here comes Jeff. He's still up and running under his own power, going slowly. See what, and this could all be part of a timing sequence. See if he decides to put the foot down or if he has an issue. He's coming fast enough to where I don't believe he's coming into the pit area. Now he starts to go, and it is in a outside lane sequence for Jeff Bernard. Bring him to you, Jeff Ayler.
Bernard off the turn, the sun glistening off the water, rising from the east, brings it to the start-finish line buoy. Jeff Bernard in the U7, Spirit of Detroit, Tri-Island Energy, Detroit Machinery Center. Bernard picked up his first win in the Unlimited Division, Brad, in 2008 at Madison, Indiana.
He did indeed, and I'm sorry, didn't mean to step on you. I thought you were taking a breath. Jeff, take him around the race course. I'm going to step away for about 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Jeff, of course, born just down the road in Allen Park, Michigan. Now resides in Kent, Washington. Works for Boeing full-time out in Seattle. Jeff married to his wife, Christabel, and they have 2 daughters, the oldest, Blakely, and the little one at 1 year old, Rylan. Nice boat ride into turn number 2 right in front of the Yacht Club. Glass smooth water on this Sunday morning here at the 2018 Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers APBA Gold Cup exits the turn, and we'll see if the H1 officials deliver a speed. No time given over the 145.803 miles per hour, 145.803 for Jeff Bernard of the U7. Boat owned by Dave Bardish here in Detroit. Dave Bardish has his name on the APBA Gold Cup. Got it in 2005, ironically. Jeff Bernard's stepfather, the late Terry Troxel, in the cockpit that year, the U13, the Miss Al D.B. Dodge. Bernard in front of the Yacht Club. Nice rooster tail height. Slams it into turn number 2.
I got it back, Jeff. Back up on top here. He's off the corner, coming hard this time. Apparently, I missed a hot lap.
It was 145.803, and we'll duck down once again to see if we get a speed from H1 Unlimited. Thank you for the coffee. I'm sorry I missed you yesterday when you brought the others back, but thank you so much. Brad, I missed the time because when the hospitality is so great here at Detroit, they just bring you 2 fresh hot coffees up from the trailer down below.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you sharing that. I'd like it better if you'd share the cup of coffee. Why don't you send one up?
We'll replicate it there, Captain Kirk.
Well, wait, I'll just take some orders up here. Who wants a cup of coffee? I got a little show of hands up here. Yeah, Jeff, why don't you send up a whole tray?
Okay.
2 with cream, 2 without, 3 lumps, yeah.
I'll throw something out.
1 black, okay, no, make that 2. That's mine.
Boy, this
3,
has been
we
a...
got 3 blacks. We want a bunch of coffee, Jeff.
There you go. This has been a valuable test session for Bardish's team. I think they've learned a lot. I think it'll give Bert Henderson some confidence as well. Jeff and Bert work well together, communicating. They'll both have the seat today. Jeff will drive in 1B, and then Bert Henderson will take the chores over the remainder of the day at the Gold Cup. But boy, it was really nice to see them out here twice. And Brad, he's right in front of you, and looks like he's going to come this way again.
Hey, the fans will see that beacon, that strobe light popping up on top of the air scoop there. It'll go off here momentarily. Jeff. And that's part of the start sequence, as you well know, Jeff Ayler. That beacon is lit and blinking if they drop below 80 miles an hour, and that tells the officials of that and brings it to their attention, because you cannot drop below 80 miles an hour from the time you leave the pit area for the start of the heat until you hit the start-finish line. If you do drop below 80 miles an hour and that light starts to blink, you get 1 warning. And the second time you do it, you get disqualified. Get a 1 minute penalty. So you've got to stay above 80 miles an hour. That's to keep the boats running at speed and stop the park and start idea we saw a few years ago.
Bernard at a slow pace entering turn number 1. I would say, what do you think, Brad, right now about the 90, 95 mile per hour mark as he works through turn number 1? Bernard, I mentioned, picked up his first win in 2008 at the Indiana Governor's Cup in Madison aboard the FormulaBoats.com. 3 career victories for Jeff. Picked up that win at the 09 Evansville Thunder on the Ohio, Brad. That was an August event. And also, Jeff, a winner at San Diego. I believe that was in 08 as well.
It was indeed. And so Jeff knows what it takes to win an H1 Unlimited hydroplane event. And I like what you're talking about here speed-wise on him, because it's not just how long it takes him from the time he puts his foot in it to get down to where you are. It's how long does it take him to go all the way around the race course at this speed, because he's going to come, and here he goes now, because he's going to come out on the water at the 5-minute mark, meaning 5 minutes before the start, and he's got to know how long it takes him to get from point A to point B, and those 2 points can be anywhere on the race course. Right in front of you, Jeff.
Right then, he was a lane 1 sequence, made a timing run. I failed to put the watch on him. My fault. I'm sorry, Brad and race fans, as he cuts through the Grand Prix track in turn number 1. He's heading back your way, sir.
We'll see if he doesn't do it again. And that is a legal maneuver during what we call the milling sequence, the 5 minutes before the start when the boats come out on the race course. They'll be all over the race course. It's what we call the race before the race, the milling period. But cutting the race course from the front straightaway to the back straightaway on that GP course, that is a legal maneuver that Jeff Bernard just did. And Jeff is going to bring it back into the pit area here, and I suspect what we're going to see now is finally the U60, the 1955 vintage Miss Thriftway. And Jeff, this is a replica, as you well know, but if you want to talk about a racing hull and a racing name that just drips with history, boy, this is one.
And it is a beautiful, beautiful, just fabulous craftsmanship on this replica Thriftway.
Vashon Unlimited, which is a group of folks out there in the Northwest who built this thing. They built it from the original plans. And we always talk about hydroplanes, you know, you put these things together to go real fast, and this is back in the day when the hulls were wooden, and we always used to say, you know, these things aren't pianos. Well, you go down and take a look at this boat. It is a piano. It is like a piece of furniture you would be very proud to display in your home. The mahogany decking, it is African mahogany. Each piece of wood was hand-picked by a member of Vashon Unlimited's, Steve Compton, and Steve was able to do that because Steve at the time was the owner of Compton Lumber. And in fact, he was the owner of Compton Lumber until about 3 months ago. Steve advised me that he has one tiny little string still tied to Compton Lumber, but the bottom line is he's done. He's retired officially this week. This is kind of kicking off his retirement. And what a sight, looking at this particular boat. Not only does it just drip with history in unlimited hydroplane racing, it's got a lot of history right here on this river. Steve Compton is behind the wheel, and nobody is saying any more prayers right now than Steve Compton. He wants this thing to light. Jeff, this boat last ran on the Detroit River in 1957. Steve Compton has never driven a vintage hydroplane on the Detroit River. As he climbed down the ladder, he looked at me and he said, "Luce, this is a bucket list item. This has been on my list for many years. Come on, Steve, fire that baby up and let's get out on the race course."
Do you have an ID on the dignitary in the cockpit with Steve Compton?
You are a very good straight man, Mr. Ayler. It is a young lady by the name of Rachel Savoy. Now, she might be somebody who's praying more than Steve to get this thing started, as she'd like to have her ride. Rachel Savoy, the daughter of Mike Savoy Chevrolet here in the greater Detroit area.
Oh, wow.
And I talked to her just very briefly, and I said, tell me a little bit about yourself. She goes, I just love speed of any kind. She's a tiny little thing. She's swimming in her life jacket that she's got on.
And, of course, the Metro Detroit Chevy dealers, proud sponsors of the Hydrofest here. And, Brad, we saw Jefferson Chevrolet dealership here on Jefferson Avenue. Saw Rinke, R-I-N-K-E, hope I pronounced that right. We saw their dealership on Van Dyke, and numerous dealerships here in the area with the Metro Detroit Chevy dealers. We thank them all. We thank you for your support of the APBA Gold Cup and Hydrofest here in the Motor City.
Steve Compton still trying to light the candle here of that World War II Allison engine. I talked about the boat just dripping with history, and here on the Detroit River, the boat only entered 13 races, this particular hull. They won 3 of them, 2 Gold Cups and 1 President's Cup. Bill Muncy was behind the wheel in all of those regattas. He was able to receive the the trophy for the President's Cup from Dwight Eisenhower, president at the time. And the boat came back here for those 2 Gold Cups. If ever there was a boat at the center of the Detroit-Seattle rivalry, this is one of the 2. And the other boat is right below me here, the U-55 Gale 5. That's how the whole Detroit-Seattle rivalry got started in 1950 when Ted Jones and Stan Sayers and Anchor Jensen brought the slow motion 4 back here and stole the Gold Cup from Detroit and took it out to Seattle. Took Detroit 5 years to win a Gold Cup, and they did that in 1955 and took the cup back to Detroit here. That was in 1955.
The media shuttle will be
And in
departing at 8:40 this
1955,
morning for the
Bill
Garwood
Muncy took
Judges
this
stand.
boat
All media
and
personnel
figured
wishing to
he
go
had
to the
won the
Garwood
Gold
Judges
Cup in
stand,
Seattle on
please
Lake
meet
Washington.
Racer Bob on the first
They
deck at
forgot
8:40.
about a very small fine print in the racing rules that said the boat with the fastest overall time for the entire race received 400 bonus points. And in those days, the boat that scored the most points won the cup. Well, when they totaled up the elapsed time, Miss Thriftway was 4.3 seconds slower than the Gale 5. And the celebration that went on in the pit area at Seattle by the Detroiters was something you have to see footage of to believe. Detroit was getting their Gold Cup back, and they were oh so very happy. And it wasn't done yet. The Gale 5 claimed that in 1955, and so the 1956 Gold Cup took place here on the Detroit River. Bill Muncy had this very same Miss Thriftway back here, and this time he won it without any question. He blew everybody away. Chuck Thompson and the Miss Pepsi couldn't run him down. It was all Bill Muncy in the Thriftway in 1956. But then somebody came back to the pit area and said, yeah, but Muncy hit a buoy. And oh boy, then it really got confusing. And the referee at that day was Gibson Bradfield. He looked at some tape and said, yep, Muncy hit the buoy. He's disqualified. Miss Pepsi, the Detroit boat, wins the Gold Cup.
Wow.
Now, 78 days later in a court of law, they finally decided that Muncy had won the Gold Cup. He didn't hit the buoy. He went to the Detroit Yacht Club, grabbed his Gold Cup, hand carried it onto the airplane, flew to Seattle to a wild celebration at SeaTac Airport, and oh, the Detroit-Seattle rivalry was on. So there's my story, Jeff. That's the 55 and 56 Gold Cup. The Gale 5 won the 55. This boat won the 56. And Detroiters and Seattleites, oh, they had a little hatred over that Gold Cup thing going on. It was fun back then, Jeff. I only wish I was a little bit older. I kind of remember some of it.
Always love hearing you tell that story of that time in hydroplane racing. And Brad, unfortunately, the towboat operators were directed to the Thriftway. Steve Compton, as you can see, is on the nose of the craft on the deck, and he'll hook the tow rope on. Maybe they can get it back, maybe find out why the gremlin affected the start of that stock Allison engine. We'd love to see this replica 19
They've got to get this boat out and running, and I'm sure they will. Folks like Trumbull and Porter and Odie Auto Repair and Tire and Mudge Authentic Artisan Deli. The list goes on, but these were people who helped send the Thriftway here. They'll get it running, Jeff.
So Steve Compton on the tow rope, and they'll get the replica Thriftway back to the pit area. Brad, I'm seeing some of our vintage inboard hydroplanes, 6-7 liters. I see the Supersonic driven by Scott Kirshner going into the water. So we'll see some of our inboard vintage crafts out here on the 1 mile track. And Brad, with that, as they're towing the Thriftway back in, I'm going to step away for a moment, and I'll be back with you in just a bit.
Thank you, Jeff. And we look up. Well, now we can see the Thriftway on the way back to the dock here. Unfortunately, they're towing that one back. We'll get it back out on the water later. Rachel Savoy was hoping to go just a skosh faster than she's going right now. So was Steve. So we'll make that happen. Meanwhile, now we will start turning our attention toward our H1 Unlimiteds. They are first up on the racing docket. That'll come up in just a little over 30 minutes from now with our Heat 1A. It is the Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers Hydrofest, the APBA Gold Cup, the world's oldest active motorsports trophy. We'll step away. Boats are starting to sling up and get ready. We'll start putting them in the water in about 10 minutes.
out on the water are vintage inboards taking to the water here at day number 3 of the Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers Hydrofest. Scott Kirshner on the inside, then the all-aluminum craft, the Supersonic. And on the outside, a beautifully built boat, a replica of a Ted Jones design, the H88, Miss Mahogany is a Thunder in front of the Detroit Yacht Club. Vintage hydroplanes will be in Madison, Indiana, coming up in September. On September 22nd and 23rd, they'll be featured by 2 Unlimiteds that are here this weekend, the replica Gale 5 and the original Miss US 4. Third boat out is the H222 Best Wishes, owned and driven now by Glenn Charest out of Oakland, Michigan. Best Wishes, what a boat in its day. Owned and driven by the late Bill Muncie from 1959 to 1966. That is the H222 on the back straightaway. Best Wishes. Get some more information here to you momentarily on the H222 as the Supersonic Miss Mahogany come down the front chute.
Jeff Ayler, this has been a number of years since I've seen that Supersonic run, and I was just talking to some of the fans up here atop the tower.
The 7-liter Best Wishes up in turn number 2 was built for and owned by racing legend Bill Muncie in 1959 and was raced by Muncie through 1967. For many years, Muncie led in points in the 7-liter class with Best Wishes, while also competing in the Unlimited division with Miss Thriftway. Best Wishes is named after how Muncie signed so many autograph and letters.
Jeff, not sure if you're picking me up down there. You got me?
Gotcha.
Very, very good. I started to mention that it's been a number of years since I've seen this Supersonic run, and I was telling some fans up here that it used to have kind of a porpoising ride to it. It kept jumping up and down on the nose, but the boat looks real good out here right now. They got it all dialed in. Looks good.
And the black flag delivered here at the start line for the Supersonic and Miss Mahogany. Brad, the boat to the outside, it appeared at Madison last year for the 5 to the 5 Madison Vintage Thunder. It ran great there, but they blew a motor. But this is a replica. It's some designs off a Ted Jones 7-liter, and it's just a gorgeous piece out of Arizona.
Yeah, it sure is. And just as a side note, Jeff, giving you credit for it because I know where the credit comes, but I just had a cup of coffee delivered to me. How about that?
That is outstanding. Thank that individual who brought you the Java.
Yeah, she's sitting right next to me, and I did. I thanked her appropriately for a nice hot cup of coffee. Great to see these vintage boats back out on the water. We're going to see many more of them before the day is done. Jeff, in looking at the schedule as we're getting close to putting our H1 Unlimiteds in the water for Heat 1A, can you remember a schedule this tight?
That's how they do it here in Detroit.
Channel 4 cameraman, please report to the third deck.
And
of
as
the
you and
tower.
I discussed, Jeff Ayler, you and I are of a certain
please
vintage
report
where
to
we
the
like
third deck.
race day. And boy, that's what we've got right now is race day. We're going to do all the racing here today, and we've This isn't the first time this year we've done it. We had the same situation down in Guntersville, but of course that was not the Gold Cup, so we only had 3 sets of heats to run before the final. This is the Gold Cup. We've got to run 4, so we're going to be busy.
I wanted to give my compliments out to, of course, Mark Weber, the top man here, and his race director, Lee Hertz. Brad, I know Lee was going through several schedules for yesterday and even preparing for today yesterday with that inclement weather, unfortunately, we had on Saturday. So a great job by Lee Hertz and his team, the race director, to get this schedule penciled in. We're going to run them all, and that's the way it should be.
We are going to run them all, and I'm actually really glad, Jeff, that you brought that up, because there was so many discussions and so many meetings going on yesterday involving the Grand Prix, from our HRL League and our H1 Unlimiteds, our vintage people. What can we do? We've got to get a show to the fans, et cetera, and how are we going to do this and make it work and still play by the original Gold Cup rules, et cetera. They made it work, and it seemed like every time I was looking for Mr. Weber or anybody a part of his team, they were in a meeting somewhere in a trailer, but they pulled it off. This is what we got, and right now it is perfect, so let's go.
Coming up at 9 a.m. will be Unlimited Heat 1A in memory of Charlie Strang, and at 9:20